You're listening to Combat Radio with Ethan Dettenmeyer, right here on LA Talk Radio.
Good morning. Time for another episode of Combat Radio. And it's never too early to talk about Christmas. And as you know, December 7th is Combat Radio's third annual Christmas breakfast for homeless children. We're going to do 400 kids this year at least. You know, we've never said no, so it could turn into 600, 700. And it's a huge event for us, and it's something that we encourage you to get involved with. You can also find information about that at our new YouTube page, Combat Radio Images, or you can go to, well, I would say go back to the website, combatradionow.com, go to the events page, and hopefully get involved. And this is going to be a show here because I'm surrounded by some epicness, and we'll get to that momentarily. Everyone hang on. Here we go. All right, time to start the awesomeness. We are very fortunate to kick things off. Well, actually, coming back for a revenge visit, no pun intended, is our good friend, Academy Award-nominated production designer Joe Alves, who's done everything from, Jaws, obviously, Jaws, Close Encounters, Sugarland Express, Escape from New York for director John Carpenter. Now showing up, I don't feel tardy. You want to grab yourself a seat and bring it in. Writer-director Carl Gottlieb, the writer of Jaws, Jaws 2, Caveman, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously working his own hours around the station lately. But we're happy that you're here nonetheless. Actually, Dave with Chronicle Books is with us. We're going to have him here. And then the man who, the most interesting man in the world this week. Anyway.
Stay thirsty, my friend.
Gunnar Hansen, the how do you like to be introduced these days, knowing that you were obviously part of the rather epic scene that was Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and you're a writer?
Yes.
You know, so how do you prefer? How does the title go?
Gunnar Hansen, immigrant who made good.
Immigrant who made good. Viking immigrant?
Yes.
Yes, Iceland originally, right?
Right.
People don't realize that you are, quite an epic writer, and there's a book coming out in about 4 days, Chronicle Books.
Chainsaw Confidential.
And I understand they're already, looting bookstores for it now to try to get your book early. But why don't you tell us a little bit real quick, kick things off before this conversation spirals into complete movie chaos. Why don't you kick things off with what can people expect if they rush out and pick up the Chainsaw Confidential?
It's about the making of Chainsaw. I interviewed all the surviving cast members and every crew member I could find, and so I got their story. But it's a day-to-day account of the experience of filming Chainsaw, and then from there it talks about how the world reacted to the movie when it came out, how the critics responded, how the public responded, and why it is that critics hated Chainsaw Massacre. The London Times said the less said about Tobe Hooper's Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the better. And then from there it talks about how the perception of the movie has evolved and what its place in horror is.
How does that strike you? You're in demand, I would imagine. I mean, everyone at a convention wants to shake your hand. Can you endorse a signature series? Can you endorse a signature series of meat cleavers and butchery tools? And, at the time, it's like it's almost like finally I'm validation,
Yeah, I'd like to do a McCulloch ad.
Yeah. I'm surprised you haven't. The world is so cryptic in a way now. I'm surprised that you have, at least on Saturday Night Live. I don't know why.
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, part of it, I think that after Chainsaw Massacre, I moved to New England and hunkered down and wrote for almost 20 years before I looked up and looked around and realized Chainsaw was big.
Yeah.
And I just had nothing to do with the movie business. So I think that's part of the reason.
Why was that? Was it just because the overall experience was kind of like, screw this, man? Well,
I liked working on Chainsaw, but I did another picture right after that I never got paid for.
Chainsaw 2?
No. I wish. And then
Still in litigation?
I met a couple of movie producers, and no criticism of anyone, but I realized I didn't like these people, and I just didn't want to be like them. And I'd also decided that I really wanted to write. That was always what I was intended to do, and I thought if I have to make that choice, I'd rather struggle and do what I have to do. I rode the garbage truck to pay the bills. And I was happy to do that because it allowed me to write. And I didn't want to ride the garbage truck for the chance of being in a movie. And that was the fundamental difference of why I went up there and just stayed out of the business.
That's actually a brilliant. And now let me actually run that by our resident writer, Gottlieb. How do you like? That's pretty well put, don't you think? The garbage truck riding analogy.
Oh yeah, I mean, somebody once described Hollywood as high school with money. You know.
What was Hunter S. Thompson's analogy? It's like a loathsome money pit of doom, or
where the best go screaming down the halls. I mean, it's a wonderful quote. It's too long. You have to carry it written down.
I know it is too long, but it's very appropriate.
I'm thinking of carrying it as a card, but no, I empathize completely. There are two kinds of writer. There's compulsive writers who have to write. And then there's writers like me. I'm a deadline writer. If I didn't get paid, I wouldn't write.
Caveman 2, where is it, buddy? That kind of stuff?
Yeah, well, I'd have to work with those producers again. And as Gunnar knows, it's sometimes a limitation. But did you act in the picture also? Or did you?
No, I just wrote it. Yeah. I'm sorry. What am I saying? I wish I'd written it. No, I played Leatherface in the movie.
Okay.
Yeah, see, Carl, this is what happens when you're late. You don't get properly introduced because we were trying to give Gunnar the title he actually deserves, not the one he's known by on the street. Because I don't think a lot of people really understand what a high octane writer you actually are. It's kind of you're smiling, but.
Thanks.
Let me just tell everyone now. Let me tell the million-plus listeners. Fantastic writer. It's interesting that sometimes I think that's your passion, but everyone's like, "Hey, man, sign this Leatherface mask."
And I'll tell you though, I'm grateful for those fans.
You don't look like a Leatherface. I mean, this is radio, so I have to describe.
No, it's all you guys.
But I do have, as they say, a face for radio, a leather face for radio. Yeah, but I mean, I'm grateful for fans who want to come up and meet me and have me sign autographs.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, absolutely, like you say.
But, I didn't want to interrupt you, but what you said prior to the show starting in studio here was that you had so much fun doing the movie that it was almost kind of difficult to hear people just kind of be like, like I said, elitist about it, Well, I want to say something about that. I actually am asked, it's the most common question, was it fun making the movie? And my answer is always no, because it was a great experience, but it was never fun. It was a miserably difficult, exhausting job. But it was, in fact, one of the best experiences of my life. I was fresh out of college, out of grad school. And I'd never been in a situation where everyone I was working with was really good at what they did, and they were really trying hard to do their best. That was very new to me because, no matter, even when you're in grad school, half your friends are slackers. Can I ask you, I'm just curious, what was your reaction? Hooper shows up, or you meet him and goes, I got this idea for a movie. I'm thinking, and you're probably thinking like road trip movie, Sugarland Express, or what. Why don't you read this? Tell me what you think. I'd like you to be in it. Or how did that go down, and what was your reaction to all that?
Well, actually, it sort of went the other way, because what happened was that I met this guy who said to me, it's too bad. There are these guys in town who are making a horror movie, and you'd be perfect to play the killer. But it's been cast. So I had a pretty good idea. And then I ran into him a week later, and he said, the guy they cast is holed up drunk in a motel and won't come out, and they're now looking again. So I had a pretty good idea that I was playing the heavy. And I never had that thought of, I don't know if I want to do something like this. People ask me that. Wasn't it a psychological burden, to play this? Didn't you have nightmares? But to me, it was just like, well, this would be an interesting job.
Well, yes, make believe. Yeah. I mean, everybody forgets that. I mean, there's this tendency on the part of the public to identify the actor with the character. They call you by the character name, and they're disappointed when you're not Spock or
So you're not a method actor. You didn't stay with the mask on and eat human flesh to really kind of.
Well, you really ought to read the book, because there's this whole discussion that I have in the book about the issue of method acting and how people are convinced that I was severely damaged psychologically because I had to become Leatherface. And there was one actor, Paul Partain, who played Franklin, the guy in the wheelchair, who was a method actor. And he would become Franklin, that when he arrived on the set each morning, he would sit in his wheelchair, not get out. He'd shift into his whiny Franklin persona, and he stayed Franklin for the entire period he was in the movie. And we despised him. because we didn't know that wasn't Paul. Years later, I met Paul and thought, what a great guy.
I have a friend of mine, a character actor named Larry Hankin, who plays homeless people and winos and crazies.
But you said he was an actor. What does he really do? I mean, all right, go ahead.
He's over the years he's had experiences where he's worked with a well-known director-producer who shunned him afterwards. When he finished the part, they'd go to the wrap party and they'd thank him, and then he'd run across these people in social worlds. Hollywood's a relatively small town. He'd run into them, and after a while, the producer or director would say, "Oh my God, you're an actor. You're not really an LSD burnout street person." He said, "I thought they just got a guy off of Skid Row and kind of cleaned him up and brought him onto the set." And Larry said, "Well, thank you.
I guess. Yes, thank you."
And you kind of live with that persona for a long time, and in some cases, if you're if you're Captain Kirk, the two blend and you become that guy.
What are you saying about Shatner there, Gottlieb? Are you telling me that he walks around as Kirk?
I'm saying he's very important. He's more important to Bill.
Yes, I think.
And it must be very tempting to fall into that.
Well, of course, when the world plays along, everybody's happy. Oh, he is like that. That justifies my belief that all actors are their characters.
Yeah.
Well, you'd be amazed at the number of people I meet who are really disappointed that I'm not like Leatherface.
Yeah. You tell them that if
that's unsettling
to hear. The outfit on, you will get properly bloodthirsty and crush their bones.
Well, it's we had talked earlier how when I was over at Warner Brothers, I tried to get Daniel Pearl on a movie. Did you talk to him about this book? Did he?
Oh, yes.
And what did he was really interesting to talk to. Our meeting actually, production-wise, took place over coffee, which is always great because then you really get the we're not trying to come together on a job conversation. You get this, hey, can we just kind of click, and almost on a socially. So what did he have to contribute to the book? You want to without giving too much away to the readers?
Well, I think the great thing about interviewing him was, like everyone I interviewed, they really wanted to talk about the movie, and he certainly did. And the best thing was he talked about the technical issues of shooting this movie. He talked about the problems and challenges they had. They shot film because they shot it on 16, and they were really worried about grain. They shot it on the slowest positive color film they could get because they were worried about blowing it up. And as a result, it was basically shot this movie in Kodachrome. And the stories he had about the issues of that,
that's a lot of lighting.
Yes, well, and the problem was he said we had 4 lights. We had 2 5Ks and 1 10K. And he said I thought I'd never used that much light. I thought I could burn down a city with that. That's the way he said it. But of course the problem was, as the production manager said later to me, he said, and you look at the movie at night, every shot is 2 to 3 f-stops underexposed. And he said luckily it worked. But he talked about those technical issues. He talked about how some shots were put together, how he came up with the idea of doing the trackings, the dolly shot, where Pam, who's the one who goes on the hook, gets up from the swing and walks to the house.
Yeah, I love that shot.
That low tracking shot. So he was able to talk about the film at a technical level that I otherwise never could have understood. And that was the great pleasure. Plus he talked about what he liked about the movie and what some of his experiences were.
Funny story, when I met him, he had shot Pathfinder, which was a great premise, but the movie really doesn't deliver, I think, personally. But it looks great. And so when I met him that day, we were talking briefly, and I just turned to him, I go, and so, Pathfinder, like that, and he goes, yeah, what happened, huh? he just like me goes, yeah, what happened? Just so real. But let's go back in time for a minute, okay? You're off in Texas. They say, okay, here's your mask and run around with a chainsaw. Mm-hmm. Okay, no production insurance issue there, right? I'm guessing, right?
Oh, no. And no stunt people.
No stunt people.
Oh, God.
So, and it's night, some of it.
Yes.
So, did you have any... it says a lot about you to be like, all right, let's fire this baby up.
Well, as the woman who was the assistant art director and who doubled as stunt woman for Marilyn Burns, Sally, said to me, when they asked me to jump through a second window, I was so stoned that I said, "It's brilliant." So I just thought, sure, I'll do whatever you want.
So when you said that, when the word stunt woman, when that was mentioned, the Jaws crew here started chuckling.
Well, the combination of stunt woman and art director.
Yeah, it doesn't quite work.
That's a hybridization that
It is creative,
in the studio world that we came from, you didn't see many people who were hyphenates in that way. That's kind of like, boy, I don't know, associate producer, Teamster captain.
Yes. Yeah. How many union rules did that break?
Yeah.
You know?
What was the shooting schedule on that?
It was scheduled to shoot for 3 weeks, but very quickly they realized that we shot it in 6. And to get it shot in 6 weeks, we shot 7 days a week, 12 to 16 hours a day.
Now, Toby's an old friend. I knew him in the years after that, when he lived in Austin. And, great guy, good director. And, much misunderstood because of that movie. He spent the rest of his career, I think, being a good director, and
he is a good director.
And people would say, but you did Texas Chainsaw, you did that film, which is the book.
But there's moments in that film that are, especially shot-wise, in its simplicity, where you're just looking at this going, yikes. Mm-hmm. And that is, to be able to connect that to an audience, that's an art.
But what we were talking about earlier, about what the critics do to a film as opposed to what the audiences appreciate, and sometimes that critic thing lasts, for the critics, and oh yeah, but he did that. They're not asking the general public and we've obviously seen that with the Jaws movies, Yeah.
I remember not wanting to see Texas Chainsaw being very young, but watching it going, I don't know if it's right for me to really enjoy watching this movie. I was questioning my own sanity going, should I really think this is a good movie to watch? Should I be thinking that way? I mean, what am I crazy?
No,
don't answer it.
But otherwise,
yeah. Of course, you're crazy. We're here.
Yeah.
We know that.
What's that got to do with this conversation?
But as I'm sure Gunnar knows, you do a picture, and at the time you're just doing your job. You're just trying to get through the schedule. Just like as we did, and you don't think about its place in history.
Oh no.
But that movie probably is the first of the torture porn, whatever the genre that they have put on it, whatever the handle is that makes it convenient to understand that film. When you're the first one, you carry that burden for better or worse. People come up to you and say, I never drive down a lonely country road without thinking of Leatherface.
Yeah.
And the same way that they
Yeah,
tell
they never
Joe
go
and
in
me,
the water
we
without
never,
the
we,
shark.
after
Yeah.
that movie, we never went swimming in the ocean. It has this lasting cultural effect that the critics or cineasts, I mean, decent film critics, acknowledge the integration of a film as part of pop culture, and then they re-examine it in the light of everything that's happened. But then there are others who assign it a niche, and for the rest of their lives, their little intellectual lives, that's where that movie lives, and they won't see it in any other way. They won't look at the composition, they won't look at the lighting, they won't look at the acting. They just say, oh yes, torture porn, first one.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree. And by the way, I love the word cineast.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I use it in the book, and I love the word because it sounds like something else.
Yeah.
You're listening to Combat Radio with Ethan Dettenmeyer, right here on LA Talk Radio.